it is on the risk mitigation strategies and methodologies. So risk management is a very important aspect of project management. In fact, for the risk management, you have to identify the risk, then assess and develop that, and take certain steps to mitigate that, monitor, and control. So on these aspects, we have 4 speakers today. We'll be speaking on different subjects. We have Jaydeep Jesur, Senior Manager, Engineers India Limited, and Mr. Sudhir Kumar, he's CGM Production, ONGC. We have Naveen Parashar, Chief General Manager, Engineers India Limited, and Mr. Ajay Dashore, Deputy CEO, ISPRL. So, all speaker, I'll tell that you have 14 minutes each for each speaker. So, first of all, I'd like to invite my colleague from Engineers India, Mr. Jaydeep Jesur, Senior Manager. Please, he'll be speaking on OCTEV methodology, a proactive approach to mitigate the delays. Please, Jaydeep.
Thank you for introducing me, sir. Before I begin, I would like to congratulate each and every member of IW. We have been working relentlessly for past few months. So please a big round of applause for them first, sir. Talking about this topic, I'll be discussing about Octave methodology, which is a proactive approach to mitigate project delays. So if I talk about the agenda, first we'll discuss about what is Octave methodology. Next we'll see why do we need Octave methodology. And in the later part, we'll see how beneficial it is to various stakeholders. So as per survey conducted by Nelson India, there is an average delay of 18 months in petroleum large-scale projects. And you will not believe me, but the cost overrun due to this delay is 6.9%. That's too much of money just due to delay. If I talk about the project lifespan, we divide it in 5 different phases, which is concept, engineering, procurement, construction, and commissioning. For today's discussion, our focus area is on procurement. So coming to the big question, what is Octave? By definition, it is optimized cost and time-based evaluation methodology. Basically, it's a bid evaluation methodology where we optimize cost as well as time. How we do it, we'll see in next slide. So before jumping to Octave solution, we first need to understand what is LC evaluation methodology. Conventionally, we evaluate bids on lowest cost basis evaluation method. So for illustration, suppose there are 2 bidders. Bidder A quotes 50 lakh rupees for particular item, whereas bidder B quotes, let's say 48 lakh. Since bidder B's quotation is less than that of bidder A, we mark bidder B as L1 bidder and we place the order on bidder B. So let's assume the delivery period is 50 weeks. So if he delivers in 50 weeks, great. If he delivers in 55 weeks, we'll apply penalty for the delay. But what if he supplies in 45 weeks? There is no reward for them, right? So there were 2 questions. There are some vendors in the market who are willing to deliver it earlier and who are capable enough to deliver it earlier. But what is their motivation? Second question is, suppose due to some alpha, beta, gamma vendors, I am achieving early commissioning and I earn 100 rupees, let's say. So can I pass on X out of these 100 in fair and transparent manner to these alpha, beta, gamma vendors? So these 2 questions led me to the idea of Octave methodology and I started working upon that. In Octave methodology, we ask bidders to quote their commitment of delivery period along with prices during bid submission stage only. So if I continue the same example, suppose bidder A quotes 50 lakh rupees with their delivery period commitment as 40 weeks instead of 50 weeks. Okay. And for bidder B, he is quoting 48 lakh rupees, but their commitment of delivery period is 50 weeks only. So the time benefit I am getting in case of bidder A is of 10 weeks, which is 0 for bidder B. Now I would convert this time benefit into currency. So that is time benefit in INR. equals time benefit in weeks multiplied by step value, which is in percentage of quoted price per week. So if I calculate in the last column, if you see it is 2.5 lakh for bidder A, it's bidder B. For bidder B, it's 0 because they're not giving any time advantage in evaluation. So the final evaluated price as per Octave methodology will be A minus E column. So which comes out to 47 lakh 50,000 for bidder A and 48 lakhs for bidder B. So if you see as per LC methodology, bidder B was our L1 bidder. But as per Octave methodology, bidder A is our L1 bidder. So we'll place the order on bidder A and we optimize time as well as cost. This is a formula which we'll be incorporating in tender document. EP equals QP minus 1 by 2, QP by 100, SD minus QD. This is a formula, essentially is the same as what we discussed in previous slide. So not going into nitty-gritties of this formula. So applicability. So far so good. Now you would say since Octave is so good, let's replace LC methodology with Octave methodology. So I would say no. In project procurement, we procure so many items ranging from fasteners to flanges to pumps to reactors to compressors. We would apply Octave methodology only for the items which are falling on the critical path or long lead items. Why? Because applying Octave methodology for off-the-shelf items would not actually optimize the time as well as cost which we intend to achieve through Octave methodology. So we need to be very selective while choosing between the Octave methodology and LC methodology. Let's talk about salient features. Cost and time optimization, of course, is the essence of this methodology. Controlling the critical path, we are squeezing the schedules. Transparency, which is the major principle of public procurement. We upfront declare the formula, the methodology, the mechanism in tender document itself. Fairness, we provide equal opportunity to all the bidders. Fairness is another principle of public procurement. And safeguarding mechanism, that brings us to the very interesting section of our presentation, which I'll cover in next slide. So if I continue the same example, there were two bidders, bidder A and bidder B. Now let's assume there is another bidder, bidder C. He quotes delivery period of 10 weeks instead of 50 weeks. So now if I ask you the probability of failure for this bidder, you would say 100% or you say 99.9%. So if he's committing it, I'll complete this in 10 weeks instead of 50 weeks, that's definitely a recipe of failure, right? So here's where I need to protect buyer's interest as well, because buyer is a major stakeholder in this entire process. So the first safeguarding mechanism is limits. Where I was when I was defining delivery period in my tender document, I would define 50 weeks as upper delivery limit. If I'm continuing the same example, and I would also define lower delivery limit, which is let's say 40 weeks. So bidder has to quote any value between this 40 and 50. He cannot quote any value outside this. This would prevent them from giving unrealistic commitments. And the second is safeguarding mechanism is variable price reduction schedule. Conventionally, we apply PRS from 0.5% of total order value to 5% of total order value in proportional to the delay. So that is 10 weeks of PRS liability. In Octave methodology, there is a additional PRS which is equivalent to their early commitment of delivery period. This would ensure that no bidder gets undue advantage of this Octave methodology. At the same time, we also ensure that our evaluation remains fair and square right from bidding stage to the execution stage. Now, there is a reason we call it proactive procurement. Our procurement timelines are shrunk. We optimize our schedule. Earlier, we used to prepare catch-up schedule based on delayed deliveries. Now, we will prepare match-up schedule based on early delivery. Early commissioning can be realized and early revenue generation can be realized. And that brings us to the last section of our presentation, which is how beneficial it is to various stakeholders. If I talk about suppliers' point of view, they get quick payment, better liquidity, innovation. If they need to supply in 40 weeks instead of 50 weeks, obviously they need to innovate some of their practices, some of their processes. They need to get back to the drawing board. Benchmarking, if 3 out of 4 times if someone is supplying in 40 weeks instead of 50 weeks, it creates positive performance pressure among the peers. And gradually it becomes a new benchmark. Talking about buyer's perspective, early commissioning can be realized, early revenue generation can be realized. they have reduced interest burden, and they can capture the market early. Talking about investors' perspective, there's a reduced risk profile, quicker return, better liquidity, and overall strengthening of credit sector. And if I talk about the benefits which we receive as a nation, we can achieve our growth targets faster. It attracts FDIs, better macroeconomy. And when I talk about this transaction of procurement, it's not between just buyer and seller. It's not a dual relationship. When a order is placed on a vendor, they are again dependent on their sub vendors and they are dependent on their sub vendors. So basically, the bottom rung of the vendors are mostly micro or small entities. So any positive impact on the upper rung of the pyramid will definitely percolate to the bottom rungs of the pyramid. So it will create a positive impact on overall economy. And last but not the least is trust built up. So when you ensure that each rupee of public money is spent wisely, fairly, and effectively, we bridge the gap of trust deficiency underlying in public procurement and governance at large. So that was all. My name is Jaydeep Jesur, and before I hand over this to next presenter, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our chairperson, Mrs. Vardika Suklaji, and all the other directors for inspiring us and to think and to encouraging us to think out of the box. And very special thanks I would like to express my gratitude to Sri Ashish Sen Gupta ji, who has motivated me throughout this journey and who has mentored me throughout this journey. A special thanks to Naveen Parashar sir for the support he is giving. And lastly, special thanks to all of you for patiently listening to me. It's indeed an honor to stand in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaydeep. It was for the relatively newer area of OCTEV. I think most of us were not aware about this technology. Now I would like to invite Mr. Sudhir Kumar, CGM Production, ONGC, for speaking on mitigation of disputes in field development plans. I think for question and answer, we'll be doing it at the end in case the time permits. So we'll continue with all the four presentations. Mr. Sudhir, please.
At the outset, I would convey my thanks to IEW. I would convey my thanks to entire ONGC fraternity,
Sir,
and
speak a bit
also
closer to mic, I think.
and also thanks to my school, that is School of Management PDE, where I am a scholar also. So the timer is still running, so that's why. Okay, thank you. So I will be talking about mitigation of disputes in field development plans. Some of us may be aware what are field development plans, but I would briefly touch upon for the benefit of the audience why there are disputes, what are the factors that contribute to it, and how they could be mitigated, though not totally avoided. India is a dynamic energy landscape. These figures that you see on this slide are from the India Energy Week itself. That brochure shows this, that our consumption is likely to increase in the future. Our oil demand is going to double. We are the largest importer of gas, fourth largest importer. Though renewables and other forms of energy are coming in, but still oil and gas will continue to be a major energy source for India in the short term and medium term, if not the long term. India is growing at a very rapid pace, so oil and gas is one of the important fuel that can fuel the fast, rapid growing economy. So it is important that all our oil and gas resources are exploited within time, within cost, at the best possible rate, so that the country benefits and the import burden is reduced. Some figures to highlight that our world as such, global oil demand is going up every year, and for calendar year 24, IEA estimates a demand of 103 million barrels per day. So as we can see from this slide, that the oil demand, despite the rapid and very strident calls for energy transition, the oil demand keeps on increasing across the world, and more so in the Indian subcontinent and in India. Even the EIA, that IEA and EIA, both the figures show increasing oil demand over the years. The forecast for the per barrel cost of crude oil seems to settle at $70 per barrel. So $70 per barrel should be the strike rate for all the evaluation of the field development plans that we do. So in the long term, it is expected that oil won't fall below $70 per barrel. Now, what's a field development plan? Some of us know, and most of us know, that when oil and gas is discovered, there is a notification to that discovery. Wherever we drill oil and gas wells, some of the wells there are discoveries. So that discovery notification is given to the regulator, to the stock exchange, or whatever is required by the law of the land. And then the contractor, the operator of that particular discovery notifies a potential commercial interest. That means that discovery, because many oil wells, we do get oil and gas, but they are not of commercial nature. So once the contractor feels that it is of commercial nature, then it further declares it as of commercial interest. Then an appraisal program. Appraisal program means, in layman terms, to evaluate what is the extent and what is the potential, what is the quantum of oil discovery or the gas discovery that has been made by that discovery well. Once the appraisal program is done, then the contractor or the operator gets the sense of commerciality. Then he declares declaration of commerciality, that is called. Now these terms are basically for contractual regime. In some of our nomination regimes, these terms have different names, but the evaluation methodology goes by this sense itself. And then later on we come to a full-fledged document which is called as a field development plan. What does field development plan give or tell the audience who is reading the field development plan? It is designed to ensure the most efficient and effective way of exploiting the petroleum resources that are being found. They should be based on sound engineering practices, economics, safety, and environmental concerns. It should give a outline of all the facilities that are going to be created, how many wells are going to be created, how oil and gas will be evacuated to the end consumer or the refinery. And finally, it also mentions what is the discovery area, what are the coordinates of the discovery area, because that is required for earmarking that area for that particular operator or the contractor. So this is the basically the chapters which are there in the field development plan. This slide says the same thing, that it also very importantly gives the envisaged output, because oil and gas discoveries, oil and gas fields, as we know, they continue to produce anywhere between 5 to 100 years. So any field development plan does give what is the projected production profile of oil and gas over that time frame. It also provides what sort of operations will be done at the end of 5th year, 10th year, 20th year, whatever is there in the field development plan. And on the other side, it gives a vision to the government that how much crude oil and gas availability is going to be there in the country, how much our import burden will be reduced or increased because it is a mixture of demand and supply. And accordingly, the output of those fields are tied up by the refineries and the gas consumers, as the case may be. Now, FDP, how do they, some of them do lead to disputes. So these are the various steps which happen during the course of FDP execution. Field development plans upon approval are executed by the contractor. So step 1 shows the approval, and step 10 comes to the effect of disputes. The disputes start happening at 7, 8, 9. The step 7, 8, 9, the disputes start happening because the actual field performance has come into being. It may not be as per the production profile in the projected in the development plan. Then there are course of deliberation, discussions, what is the catch-up plan. Now that is not met. Once that is not met, if it is a contractual regime field, then it leads to, conciliation, mediation, arbitrations. All that is on one side. The effect, the sad effect that happens is that we don't get the oil and gas. It gets marred by legal disputes. So disputes, what can disputes do in a field development plan of any oil and gas field? It can lead to loss of production. So there are shortages for the end consumers, inefficient exploitation of the scarce hydrocarbon resources in the country, disputes leading to arbitration, and also the ENP environment that consists of service providers, analysts, a global industry. They get an adverse perception of this sector that majority of the fields or some of the fields go into litigation. So that also creates a negative impression about our sector. Disputes are likely due to various reasons, because there are high costs involved in oil and gas operations, field developments. So they do cause disputes because the contractor is not willing to consider any sort of losses, and the sovereign government or the end consumer doesn't want any shortfall in the oil and gas production that is likely. And these disputes go to conciliation, expert resolution, arbitration, etc. The three main reasons based on literature survey and my experience and discussions and the course of my PhD studies are the contract itself, project execution, and production performance of the field development plan. From contracts, what happens is drafting an field development plan itself is a complex process. There are many estimates, there is limited knowledge, there are the assumptions, forecasts, which may go haywire during the course of execution. The contracts are not very explicit. Some of the clauses can be interpreted differently by different parties. So they give rise to disputes. There is no objective decision matrix for evaluating the FDPs. So that leads to some sort of disputes or disagreements, and then unwillingness of the contractor to proceed further on the development plan. The contracts are a result of stakeholder consultations amongst various industry partners, and all of which have conflicting goals. So many of the clauses or some of the clauses remain open-ended, which give rise to disputes later on. From project execution, this is a snapshot from an EY study. Majority of the study suggests that there are non-technical issues which are responsible for majority of the overruns. Technical issues seldom create a lot of problems. Another SP paper says project execution, the major factors, the rank 1, 2, and 3 are scope variations, labor shortage, subcontractor performance, changes in drawings. So this is basically from the project execution point of view. This is not from the subsurface point of view. So these also cause project execution delays. Production performance, there's a very good paper by Mr. Nandudkar who's on deficiencies in production attainment. They say poor production attainment is due to unreliable forecasts. Now, forecasts at the stage of field development plan are bound to be unreliable, but they tend to be over-optimistic. Failure of assurance process and lack of accountability for production volumes. Even today, there is you can get a development plan approved, and if it doesn't perform, there is lack of accountability. Who is responsible for it? So this paper does point out that. I will show some slides on it. So this paper did analyze over 100 fields, and the historical experience was majority of them, close to 75% of the fields do fall short of what is forecasted in the field development plans. Appraisal, now we saw a phase like appraisal. Appraisal plays a key strategy, but to shortcut the field development plan, many operators, contractors don't do proper appraisal. So if there is an aggressive appraisal, the production attainment is likely to fall. And if it is conservative, it is well done, production attainment would be good. Heavier crudes tend to have poor attainment. So if the crude is heavy, the contractor should be careful to forecast its volumes. Facilities have the largest impact on production attainment if facilities are not constructed as per plan. So they create a huge impact on the deliverability of the field development. Wells, others, and reservoir. Now, reservoir is one important factor which is always held as the culprit, but it is further down the line. So facilities and wells need to be perfectly made as per the development plan to evacuate all the oil and gas. Aggressive schedules is one reason. Most of the field development plans that we see have very aggressive schedules which may be close to unrealistic, and they tend to create project overrun and cost overrun. Mitigation of disputes. So there are disputes. There is a standard mechanism which is there in the contract itself, which says that you will go in for this type of arbitration, conciliation, all those things. But how to reduce those disputes is the major factor. So the contracts should have explanatory notes. One of the suggestions is explanatory notes, as in acts and rules. Now, many of the clauses are interpreted in 2-3 different fashions, so that should be avoided. There should be some upfront declaration of LD on account of short performance, because when there is short performance, when there is cost and time overrun, it leads to arguments and nothing else. So if it is upfront declared, that might make it clear to both the parties who is responsible for what and what will be the liability. The uncertain elements of ENP business are always there, so they should be discussed at every level at all possible times to reduce the dispute raising elements. Many of the times what happens is contractor or the government or the regulator tries to avoid and just keep moving with the times, and later on becomes a very big issue. Project execution is concerned, there should be third-party evaluation. One of the suggestions, one questionnaire is being developed which will be given to the contractor as well as a third party as well as to the sovereign. So they will evaluate whether the field development plan is robust enough, and there should be a proper mechanism between the government and the contractor to do due diligence on any aspect that is a thorn in the contract. This is one of the dispute resolution slides which says that it should be timely, it should be following the natural course of justice. All the agreements and approvals should be enforceable by law, and there should be a system of ranking. If there is no system of ranking, the contractors do not have any, say, future fear of not getting contracts. So if there is a scoring mechanism, it would help. The key elements of the FDP are being deliberated across the industry, and some of it will form a part of the study. So every field development plan should contain major details on it. So, and then there should be a mechanism is being developed on the time overrun and the cost overrun, who is liable for beyond a certain range of cost and time overrun. And any clauses which have uncertainty should be clarified upfront or at the appropriate point of time. I did rush through it because it was a major work. So thanks for all your attention. I hope in short this has drawn attention to some of the important points in any field development plan. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhir, for that elaborate presentation on mitigation of dispute in FD. I would like to invite Mr. Ajay Dashore, CEO ISPRL, for his presentation on project challenges in construction of underground cavern strategic crude oil reserves. I think we can have this presentation now for the final speaker.
Thank you for introduction and good evening. This is, I thought I would be the last one, but now I got the privilege of getting the earlier one. Anyway, I welcome you all onto this last session of IEW for today's day. My topic basically is there on project challenges in construction of underground caverns. Now, what are these underground caverns? These are strategic petroleum reserves which have been created for the energy security of the country. And we hold around 39 million barrels of crude oil. So you can imagine the amount of quantity, it is almost 5.33 million metric tons. Now, why do we need them? The question is, to stock such a huge quantity of oil, why do you need them? See, in case of any supply disruptions or war or emergency, what will happen? You are in the Middle East, if there is some problem in the Gulf, etc., your supply gets choked. So in that case, how does your refineries run? Or in case of war, if all the countries come against you and say that block the supply of crude oil to India. So in those scenarios, you should have your own strategic reserves from which you can draw the oil and run your refineries. Because if the refineries won't run, your military won't get supply for your fuel for army and air force. So plus running your country's refinery it isn't. So as such, that's the to address the disruption of supply of crude oil. This is of prime importance that we should have strategic reserves. So these cavities now are created are one of the biggest underground storages which have been created in India. We have done total tunneling of around 30 kilometers at 3 locations, and that too it is not on the surface. It is below 80 meters below the surface of Earth. And almost 220 lakh tons of hard rock has been excavated. This rock debris which has been generated, it could fill 1 square kilometer of land to a height of 100 meters. You can imagine. This is 1 square kilometer area you can filter. That's the kind of rock debris which has been. So in this case, what we do, like building these caverns has been a big challenge, and we say it's engineering marvels. Now, how do we create these caverns, rock caverns? Normally, when you do tunneling, what do you see? You see a tunnel boring machines, जो आपका metro वगैरह में you use, and those tunnels are created. But here, in this case, tunnel boring machines can't be used. The question is why? So, the diameter of metro tunnels, etc., is compared to what we have, the tunnels is a huge difference. That is more 5 to 7 meters diameter tunnels. Now we have what? It is almost 30 meters in height, which is almost 10-story building, the height, and 20 meters in width. These are the dimensions of around almost a kilometer in which, and that too 80 meters below the surface. So constructing them is definitely a challenge. When you go at such a depth, you have the underground aquifers and water flooding during excavations. So there will be a lot of aquifers when you go down, and then you need to plug those. Abhi Sialkot mein jo tunnel ke work mein there was a rescue operation, you must have all seen. Kitni difficulty, like all sort of tunnel boring and all for rescue operations were carried out almost 40 days. The workers were trapped in that. So this is a high risk. And the rock geology which is there, that has to be studied very carefully. You need to do a mapping and etc. Despite all this, it is still unpredictable, and there are rockfall incidences due to which that gets blocked and people get entrapped into that. We are using drill and blast technology. Now, what is that drill and blast technology? What we do for creating these tunnels is we do a program blasting. There are drilling jumbos which insert explosives in a surface, and these are program control blasting. With the help of that, then after the blast is taken off, the muck is removed and then taken outside. So it takes almost 5 to 6 years for building these strategic reserves in the country. Working at depths in limited space and airflows, that's a challenge for worker, for high risk for their health. Carrying out the tunneling activities, you need to have a large deployment of heavy equipments and logistics which is required over there, because you can imagine the large quantities of debris generated which need to be removed for creation of this. So there has to be a large amount of trucks, jumbos, cranes, all to be removed. So if it is being done 80 meters below, then how do you go there and take out all those things? So you need to create an access tunnel for going till that depth from where all these your logistics. So first you create an access tunnel, you go till depth of 80 meters, and then you do start actual building the reserves and then take out. So that is the way. These are the examples of underground spaces where the above ground are not disturbed, and we can have a huge impact. Presently, we are at 3 locations: Vishakhapatnam, Mangalore, and Padur. So the projects were started in 2008, completed in 2015, 16, and 18, respective locations. All the caverns are full right now. The idea for which it was started, the mission has been completed successfully, and it has been dedicated to the nation by Honorable Prime Minister in 2018. So this is the actual picture of one of the galleries which was taken during the construction period. You can see it is a 23/12/2013 timestamp and date is there. So this is how a cavern looks like, where you store the crude oil. This is one of the one which we have a capacity of 0.625 MMT capacity in Padur location. On the side you can see there is no lining of any concrete or steel. जो आप normal tunnels में which you see, like कोई भी road tunnel वगैरह, there would be a concrete lining or a steel that. So here you don't have, it is just rock, sheer rock, which has been, the surface has come because of blasting. So here what you insert is, you insert rods and bolt. Rock bolting technology is used to give support to the rocks so that don't fall. Now, apart from that, what are the various other storage alternatives? These are rock caverns, solution mined underground caverns, in-ground concrete tanks, and conventional steel tanks, which you can see. Solution mined salt caverns are basically used in where salt leaching is done and cavities are created. Concrete tanks and conventional social tanks, steel tanks, you all are familiar. When you do a comparative analysis of all these options, so you can see the salt caverns are the most economical, safe, secure, because their capex expenditure is less compared to the underground rock caverns. But in comparison to the in-ground concrete tanks and conventional steel tanks, underground rock caverns score a higher level, and almost the cost of construction compared to the concrete above ground steel tanks is 50% for this. Plus the most important factor is the land which is required is less. When you do on the top side, you require a lot of land on this. So this is the geological risk which I was talking. Wedge failures during a construction period, these are a major safety concern during a construction and cause fatalities and drastically slow down the process. So this is black. What you see is a cavern which is being constructed, and in this case there was a wedge failure like this. So at the top it fell down. So this is the one of the incident project challenge geological risk which we had during the construction period. So due to this, the major challenge, our project got almost 2 years behind this, because then again we had to create the top side full, the benching. So this is the actual incident of the rockfall incident which I just showed you in the graphic. So this blocked the cavern top crown, and then again we had to go back and redo all those things. The another challenge is aquifers and water flooding, which I was talking. So you can see the water gushing out of this aquifer when they reached a particular depth. So important thing is to pump out this water, plus then plug the source of the water. That is also important. See, you can see the amount of water seepages are occurring over there, all the water gushing out. So construction, because to avoid any water flooding, etc., the immediate actions are required to be taken to take care of this. So we had to install immediately pumps for taking out this water and plug them. The excavation method which I was talking about was for large caverns. This is how you do the benching. The top bench, you can see the drilling jumbos over there. First, top one is drilled, blasted, then it goes on to the second level, and then it goes on to the third level. So that way, you could, in one go, you cannot create a 30-meter height tunneling. So you need to go into the this benching. Fourth challenge, which I was talking about, the risk of equipment handling to be addressed. So taking out all these heavy equipments into the tunnel for doing this blasting work and removal of murk is itself is a big challenge. So that's what we need to take care of this. This is a picture of over 22 million tons of rock which was excavated during this, and more than around 8,400 tons of explosives were used in this project. So you can see the amount of murk debris which has been generated, and it is available there right now for seeing. Finally, on concluding this, I would say these are the major distinctive advantages of our rock caverns. The product, which is crude oil, is stored at a depth of almost 80 meters and is fully isolated. This is one of the technologically proven safest and environmentally friendly means of storing hydrocarbons. We have a nitrogen inert gas blanket over the crude oil, so there's no question of any spark or fire into this. We use the principle of hydrogeological containment, which ensures that there is no leakage or contamination. Safety account on hazards on account of sabotage, storms, earthquakes, and explosions are minimized. External fires do not affect surface land requirement, and they require a very low maintenance, and safety is inbuilt. Compared to the above ground tanks, you require a regular maintenance. You need to do a inspection every 5 years. There is issues of corrosion, etc., which is not there in this case. So this makes them a perfect alternate for creating for storage of crude oils, and we have those things. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sri Ajay Dashore ji, for your wonderful presentation. In fact, underground cavern, it's very strategically very important, as we all know that for oil. Recently also, when there was a war, then we imported a lot of oil and it has been saved in the cavern. And Engineers India is involved in all the caverns.
Yeah, I would like to acknowledge that Engineers India was PMC during the construction of these caverns. And best thing is, like, you know, the first cavern which was built, in that they took for as a design consultant Sweco of Sweden. Then they learned from the experience, and in the second case at Mangalore, there was a Geostock of France. And after that, in the third location, they did, EIL did the designing on themselves. So they got that experience. So that was the thing from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Ajay ji. Now I would like to call upon Mr. Naveen Parashar. Mr. Naveen, on his working capital management, a key for successful delivery of the project. Please.
So what I explaining that while doing the one project on developing the model for EPC execution or EPC tendering, this important aspect I discovered from various literatures, and it is specifically mentioned that working capital management is one of the key aspects to be considered by the contractor while quoting for any jobs. And of late we have seen certain contractors are quoting for the many jobs, and they are winning those jobs also, but ultimately they are failing. So the main cause of failure of these contractors is the management of working capital. They are not able to manage the working capital properly and used to divert the funds from one project to other, and ultimately it's a cause of concern both for clients as well as for the contractors.
So I just begin with small definitions of what is working capital. Working capital is a short-term financing which is required for the operation of the organization. It is also known as a revolving or circulating capital or short-term capital. There are basically two components of working capital. One is the permanent, which is required for day-to-day working, and other is the variable, which is fluctuating, and it's required for taking any specific assignments, exigencies during the course of operation of the organization. So there are certain financial factors which is considered while deciding the working capital management. One is the working capital ratio, which is basically a ratio of current asset and current liability. And the ratio, if it is less than 1, it means working capital is not properly managed by the organization. And if it is between 1.2 and 2, that indicates the effective working capital management. And when it is more than 2, it's not considered as effective, and the capital is not being utilized by the organization for its growth. There are certain other important aspects. One is the average collection period, which is also one of the concerned area of many contractors. Earlier, this average collection period, as per the surveys, is around 90 days to around 100 days. Now, but last 2-3 years, we have seen a sharp reduction, and it is on an average, it is around 60 days as of now. There are certain organization clients who help contractor even to reduce that period to 30 days. And for the success of contractors, it is very essential that the working capital, they should get the money as soon as they complete the work. And also we have seen in various projects, there is a difference of around 10 to 20% with respect to physical progress and financial progress. That is mainly because of the average collection period. If that period is reduced, we may have 5 to 10% maximum difference between the physical progress and the financial progress. And one more important aspect is the inventory turnout ratio, which indicates how efficiently the company is managing the inventory. So this is an indicator. The Census Bureau of Business Dynamic Statistics says that 2 out of 3 construction contractors, they fail within 5 years. And what is more important to note, that is worse than the retail, mining, agriculture, manufacturing, and wholesale market. When working capital is mismanaged, receivable stack up, and due to slow payment, short-term debt becomes a long-term debt, and putting the construction company for poor capital position to grow, and contractor fail and project ultimately fails. So working capital management is important aspect for contractor to consider before even quoting for the job. We have seen in last many years, last few years, basically, if you see, many of the clients are going for the LSTK and LSTK jobs, EPC jobs, and many of the contractors, they try to take the jobs, indicating that they are growing in the business. But what we have seen, they are actually failing, and they are not only they are failing, but also the projects which they have taken, client is incurring heavy losses because of the delay in the projects, because they are not able to deliver the project on time. There are lags of around 40-45%, and even 60% in many cases. Even the established construction firms, many times when they take the job, they may require extended line of credit, and they may take the loans or other business loans for maintaining the working capital. And this is a serious concern as of now, because many clients are looking for LSTK and EPC contractor for taking up their projects, but with a view that there are risks, they are ultimately transferring to the contractor and they will get a better result as compared to the conventional EPC or EPCM jobs. But what we have seen, we are not finding any advantage with respect to LSTK execution and projects. We have seen delays of more than 100% of the scheduled duration also. So what contractor do when this working capital they are not able to manage? They are either slowing down the job and spreading over the longer period. They are not able to mobilize the supplies. They are not able to mobilize the contractor workers. And the second aspect is they can speed up and they can take the money. But what we have seen in most of the cases, contractors try to slow down the activity and ultimately put pressure on the client to pay either advances or some sort of they take against the BGs. This is part of the survey result which I have done as part of the project I have carried out. So financial risk is one of the major risks, is a topmost risk which is there in the project, in the contract execution. And if you see, this trend is consistent across various demographies and not only with various countries, the results is same. Financial risk is the topmost risk among the contractors. And if you see out of the financial risk, the working capital management risk is among the top 3 risks. And this tabulation is basically a comparison we have done through the AHP process, this is an analytical hierarchical process, which compare the different risk aspects with respect to each other. And if you see, working capital requirement is among the top 3 risks. So this paper while doing, a case study was done to correlate the project schedule with contract value and the requirement of working capital. So I have taken 2 cases. I will going to present 2 cases. And here, while calculating the working capital requirement, we have considered a total period of payments around 60 days. So this is a case where the contract value is around 1600 crores, schedule is around 30 months, and if you see the peak working capital requirement for the contractor is around 20%. And if you see that even after completion of the project, around 90% of the contract value he is able to get, because 10% he has to fix it with all the documentation and other things. This is a case, this is a contract value is around 350 crores, contract schedule is 26 months. And if you see, in this case, this working capital requirement is around 27%. Then we have mapped it, and there is a try to find the correlation between the schedule and the working capital. And based on the this Karl Parsons method, the correlation coefficient is found to be around 0.88, which shows there is a strong correlation between the project schedule and the working capital requirement. And if you see this table, even for 500 crores job with 20 months schedule, the peak requirement is around 225, which is around approximately around 50% of the cost. So working capital requirement contractor must calculate before taking up the job, because if he takes number of jobs and requirement come simultaneously at one time, they may end up with working capital index less than 1, which is not good for organization, and ultimately it's a failure which leads either blacklisting of the contractor, or they may not able to take their future jobs. So there are certain guidelines. I think contractor must, and even client must clearly define the requirement, how to claim the invoices, and there should be actionable tips for general contractors, suppliers and subcontractors. There has to be a visibly document like preliminary notice when you have to give, and request for information when you have to give. There has to be a clear-cut punch list, project informations and notice for completion. What we have seen, invoice are not being realized because of the documentation requirement. Most of the time, they are not able to, they are not knowing what document they have to include as part of invoices, and there is a back and forth, and it causes a delay in releasing the amount to the contractors. Then there are certain other aspects like seeking interest fee mobilization advance, changes of payment collection mode, reducing the delays in invoicing except for the stage billing cases, availing discount schemes by prompt payments, providing PBG in advance for non-deduction of retention money. And one of the important aspect is the disputes. Many times there is a dispute between the contractor and clients for the claims they do. So amicable solution is the best method to sit across and try to get the money they should. Inventory management is the other important aspect, and cash forecasting and effective budgeting. This is also one of the important aspects. I think as per PMI, they normally evaluate the project through that EV method only, with the financial progress only. But in Indian context, many of the times we used to physical progress, we take into account only the physical progress, not the financial progress. So taking into account the financial progress through cash forecasting and effective budgeting, it's very important aspect. And another aspect is the online tracking of money flow to the related stakeholders. So these are the important guidelines based on the surveys and project we have carried out. And it can be easily implementable, and contractor and client also should look into the cash flow requirements to be maintained for the success of the project, because it's ultimately defeating the very purpose of the project, both for client and the contractor. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Naveen, for touching this very important aspect of the risk mitigation. I think with this, we have come to the end of a very absorbing session.